This is for sure. We are never free to determine what fare is set before us, but we are free to decide how we will partake, how we will respond, either in resentment or in gratitude. And there's a vast difference in which way we choose to eat. You know, I'll never forget when I was a youngster, I must have been 5 or 6 years old. I had the good fortune of having a wonderful Sunday school teacher who knew how to communicate truth to kids. She used object lessons, not concepts. And one day, I think it was the Sunday before Thanksgiving, we arrived in the classroom, and sitting right in the center of the table was a huge container that was partially filled with a red liquid. I think it was red Kool-Aid. And the teacher encouraged us to engage this with all of our senses. So we were able to smell it, we were able to taste it, and we were able to hold it up to the light so we could see its beautiful color and feel how heavy it was. And then she asked a question. She said, "Is that container half empty or half full?" Well, one of the little girls who tended to always be negative, she said, "It's half empty, it's half empty." Another little boy who had the makings of a philosopher said, "No, no, no, it's half full, it's half full." Well, we debated this back and forth, back and forth. And finally she interrupted and she says, "Well, technically you are both right. However, it does make a difference in how you look at it. If you look at it as half empty, you're going to be discouraged. You're going to feel like you're going to want more, and it's just going to be a negative experience. But if you see it as half full, then you're going to be delighted. You're in abundance, and you'll be able to. It will be a positive experience. I have never forgotten that. I believe it's true. Our attitude, our perspective, the way we look at life makes all of the difference in the world. Now, that former attitude of looking at things negatively and resentfully, um, uh, let me take you back to the second chapter of Genesis, the first human being, the first Adam. God tried to provide for his creatures' needs. He planted a garden with plenty of food to eat, shade in which to rest, rivers and seas to quench man's thirst, gave Adam work to do to give him a sense of accomplishment, and even provided for his needs of companionship. First, by parading the animals before him, and then by presenting him with another human being, Eve. It's almost as if God set a banquet before Adam and said, "Take, eat, drink, fully participate." And how did Adam react to all of this gift giving? Well, it becomes apparent that he was sullen and resentful and dissatisfied. He didn't like his place at the table of food that was set before him, and he didn't trust the intentions of his host. How do we know this? Well, when the serpent began to cast aspersions on the whole arrangement, Adam fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. If he had liked being human and grateful for all the bounty that was laid before him, he would not have been vulnerable to the suggestion that he become something else and try a different diet. He didn't like being what he was, so he grasped for the one thing in the garden that had not been offered him, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, a symbol of God, God's self. Adam kicked over his own table and made a beeline for food on God's table. And that act of rebellion and distrust, notice it was born of resentment. And look at all of the chaos and the consequences that flow from this resentment. Well, I think what we need to do is we need to set another image over against the first Adam's way of eating. Let me talk about the second Adam, namely Jesus of Nazareth. He came into the world as the first Adam did, but his attitude toward himself, toward God, toward the events that were placed before him were very, very different. Whenever the Gospels depict Jesus as eating a meal, they describe him as doing what he would later do at the Last Supper. He took the bread and blessed it. He took the cup and he gave thanks. This was more than just an ancient Jewish ritual. It's a picture of how Jesus sat down at the banquet table of life with what was set before him. Unlike the first Adam, he didn't despise his place in the order of things. He wasn't resentful of the fare that was set before him. He didn't mistrust the intentions of God. There was a grateful acceptance that undergirded the whole of his life. The way he took bread, gave thanks, the way he took the cup and gave thanks. That was a model of how life is to be lived at its deepest level. I believe that it is the secret of joy, and it is within the grasp of each one of us. So, how will we partake of the events of life? If negatively and resentfully, listen, we will turn life into an agonizing conflict. But if we follow the way of Jesus, we can learn to gratefully accept the things that happen and discover the form of blessing that is assuredly there, even during a time of pandemic. Let me close with this story. This was graphically illustrated to me many years ago when I was serving as a pastor in Mississippi. I was serving as a part-time chaplain at the Magnolia Hospital. And I remember one day going in to visit a woman. She was very old and she was utterly miserable. I asked her how she was, and oh, she complained. She didn't like the hospital. She didn't like the staff, and they were way too noisy. And she complained about the bed being hard and the sheets being scratchy. And I noticed that she had a soft diet, and she complained about the fact that she didn't have many teeth and she wasn't able to chew. I mean, she just gave me a litany of all of her complaints. And when I left there, I was depressed. And I really had to get myself together. I had to pray and psych myself up to make the next visit. So after a while, when I got myself together, I went to visit another lady who was about the same age and who was in terrible pain. And I asked her, I said, well, how are you? And she said, oh, I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. Well, I commiserated with her about her situation. And I tell you, her attitude was completely different from the other lady. I mean, from the very start, a totally different attitude. I said to her something like, well, you know, the hospital can be a very unpleasant experience, can it? And she says, oh, no. She said, the hospital's been good to me. She said, it's a place for sick people, and I'm sick. I'm glad to be here. And so I surmised that there was way too much noise, you know, across the hall at the nurse's station, and too many people coming and going throughout the night, and how the bed she was in was inferior to her bed at home. And she said, oh no, this bed suits me just fine. And, you know, the noise doesn't really bother me. And to be honest with you, I kind of like the company. I noticed that she too was on a soft diet, and I mentioned something about how that the hospital food is not like food at home, and she said, you know, it's pretty good. And she says, I've only got 2 teeth, but thank God they meet. I tell you what, I wanted to stand back and give her a full military salute. I mean, she had chosen to be grateful for what she had, not resentful for what she didn't have. She wasn't angry. She wasn't resentful. She wasn't discontented. She accepted her place at the table and the particular fare that was before her. Oh, what a difference the attitude makes. The attitude's everything. These 2 women were served the same thing. One saw it as garbage, the other saw it as a banquet. The difference lay in their attitude, how they chose to eat. That second lady did what Jesus did. She took the bread and blessed it. She took the cup and she gave thanks. She was more than a conqueror of the difficult events that she faced. Now, let me ask you, how do you eat? Do you regard what's set before you resentfully and live in discontentment? Or are you grateful and find a way to live through your difficulties? Jesus took bread and he gave thanks. He took the cup and he gave thanks. Therein lies the secret of joy. And it's an open secret. It's open to all who will learn it. I ask you, how did you eat? Now that you've heard this sermon, let me rephrase the question a little bit differently. How will you eat? Well, amen.